everyone. Welcome to Jolly Molly TV. Today we're really excited. We're going to be working on block number 7 of Kimberbell's Main Street Celebration bench pillow / wall hanging project. Look at all the blocks you guys have done so far. Aren't these just amazing? You have come so far and you've been building up your skills. So today's the day you are going to be able to do the fire station. You've got this. So what we're going to do is we're going to just jump right over to the machine and get started. Let's go. Isn't this exciting? Okay, so let's load the design up on our machine. So we're going to click on an embroidery. We're going to go to the flash drive. We're going to go to Main Street. And I need to do the quilting backgrounds first, so we're going to do quilting. So I'm going to continue to add the 8x10, the consistent that I've done for the rest of the blocks. We're going to click Set, because we don't need to do anything to it. Then I'm going to add, go back to the flash drive, and we're going to go to Main Street. And you know what block we're looking for? Fire station! There it is. Okay, let's click Set. And it looks good, so we don't need to do anything to it. Click Embroidery. So that is loaded. Now, what you need to do is load a piece of poly no-show mesh stabilizer into your large hoop. I'm using my 9.5 by 14 hoop for this one because it's a big block. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward through these stitches because you've already seen these where I'm going to do the placement stitch for the batting. I'm going to tack the batting down. I'm going to do a placement stitch to put the fabric down, and then I'm going to tack the fabric down. And then I'm also going to go ahead and do the quilting with the variegated thread. Now, if you do need to see these steps, you can refer to my week 1 through 4 videos because I do show those steps in detail. But I'm assuming at this point you've already watched those. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. And when I come back, I'll be at the stopping point after the quilting. And then I'll be ready to do the fire station. So I will be right back. And we're back. The quilting background is all stitched out. Okay, so if you're following along in the instructions, we are on page 15. 15. Okay, so the next step we're going to do now is we're going to stitch the placement line for the inner building. Placement line. So this is going to be a, depending on the color you chose, a blue, either a medium blue or a dark blue thread. This is the background area where the fire truck is going to actually sit. So I'm using kind of a medium dark blue. So I'm going to get some thread to match that. So now the next thing we have to do before we can stitch that out is we need to skip these next 2 steps. This one was a placement line for the folded blue fabric, which we already did. So I'm going to go to my needle plus or minus and then down arrow. So I'm going to skip that step. This was the placement line for the blue, which we already did when we did the quilting. So we're going to skip that step as well. So this is now going to be the placement stitch for the background of the fire truck. So let's go ahead and stitch that out. It is a little hard to see because it's blue thread on blue thread, but I also watched where it went. So you can barely see it here. So I'm just going to lay that fabric on it. Make sure, double check. Everybody's good. Everybody's good. So foot down, and let's tack this blue fabric down. Here we go. And you know what the next step is. You got it. We're going to take this over to the machine and we're going to cut away the excess blue fabric. So we're back at the machine and it's showing the next stitch is going to be what they're calling an inner building decorative outline. It's only going to be stitching on this bottom edge. So I want to leave the same blue thread in the top of the machine, and let's put the foot down and stitch that out. Next up is going to be the building placement line. So since the building is red, I went ahead and put red thread in the top of the machine so we can stitch out the placement line, and then we'll be putting the fabric down next, and so the red thread will be good for both stitches. So red thread up on top, and let's stitch out the building placement line. This is getting exciting. Okay, so now get your building placement fabric, and you want to put the fabric facing up, right side up, and you want to cover that whole area and over, and then I double check on that side and I double check on the top. And it looks good. And then, of course, on this side. So we are good to go. So let's go ahead and tack this down. Of course, I still have red thread up in the top of the machine. Okay, you know the routine now. Let's take this over to the table and cut away the excess red fabric. It's starting to come together. Okay, now these next few steps, we're going to do it slightly different than what the instructions say. I'm going to show you a little trick. These pieces that are the foundation, what else do they call it? They call it the foundation placement line, then the garage door, and then the floor division. We're actually going to do it with the machine all at one time. Otherwise, you're machine, back to the table, machine, back to the table, machine, back to the table. So I'm going to show you just a little trick on how we can stitch all three of these at the machine and then go to the table once. That'll save us some time. So I'm going to put white thread up at the top of the machine because I'm going to put white fabric is going to be for the foundation. Bottom of like the supports on this pillar and on this pillar. It's going to do some little white support accents. So I want white fabric there. So white thread on top, and let's stitch the foundation placement line. There's one. Okay, leaving white thread up on top. Now I'm going to lay my white fabric down, and I'm going to go ahead and cover both of those columns, as you call them, as I call them, foundation of the columns. Okay, white thread on top, and I'm going to tack this down. Comes over here. Okay, so the next piece, we're going to do the garage door right in its place. So I'm grabbing my garage door fabric. I'm going to do this in like this one has a real pretty scroll on it. I thought it'd be a nice contrast for the garage door. So all that we're going to do is I'm going to do a real quick trim. I'm not going to do anything fancy. Just so that I'm out of the way because the garage door is going to be up in this area. So none of this fabric is going to be up in that area. So if you have fabric higher up, just do a quick trim right here in the hoop and get it to the point where it's down to here. And we can do the next step, which is the garage door. So again, white thread still on the top of the machine because my garage door is going to be white. So let's stitch out the placement line where it'll tell me where this garage door is going to go. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to lay the garage door down here with my scroll print facing up. Going to go here on this side, a little bit taller. That's good right there. Okay, and let's tack the garage door down. Foot down and go. Nice. Now right above this, it's going to stitch what it calls a floor division, which I want to be the same white that I have down below. So again, I'm just going to do a little quick trim of this top area. Not a pretty one, just a quick one to get the fabric out of the way. And I also need to get some of this white because I want to use this white fabric up on top. So again, I'm just going to do a real quick trim down here so I have access to my white fabric again. Pull, whoops, sorry for the camera shake there. Pull this one down. So now I have the white fabric ready for the next step. We're going to leave white thread up on the machine and let's stitch out the placement line for this next step. Floor division tack down. No, floor division placement line. Pull that back just a hair because I forgot to cut this piece. Not a biggie, I caught it. Okay. See, even teachers make mistakes, so let me cut it a little bit further. There. So now we're going to put the white fabric back down on top, making sure I got everybody covered. Foot down, and let's tack this fabric down. And I'm going to do it to you one more time because we can. I'm going to do another quick trim on this one just to get the excess out of the way. Doesn't have to be pretty, just quick. And get my little thread out of the way. Now we're going to do windows. We're going to do window placement line. So, same thing. I'm going to leave white in the top. Even though I'm going to use ivory fabric, it won't matter because this stitch, when it tacks it down, is going to be covered up by another color. So I can leave white up on top. So now we're going to stitch out the placement line for the windows. All in one step. Here we go. And while it's doing that, I'm going to grab my ivory fabric, which is what I want to use for the windows. Four more windows to go. It just fit. If it didn't or it got close, you could stop at this point and trim some more of the fabric off. But it's perfect fit. Don't worry, we're going to clean all this stuff up. We're going to clean all this stuff up in a minute. Can't talk today. Okay. Now it's going to tack this down, but because this might get caught, I want to trim that up a little bit and just trim this up a little bit so now it won't get caught when I lay down the ivory. Okay? So lay down your ivory fabric or whatever color you've chosen for your windows. Making sure you got everybody covered. Smooth it out, foot down, and let's tack down the window fabric. Again, this thread will be covered up by another color, but white doesn't look bad on the ivory at all. Kind of blends right in. but you won't see it. There's going to be a decorative color on top of this plus the vinyl, so you're okay. And that's my dog snoring in the background. She's totally involved. There you go. Okay. Awesome. Oops. Okay, now we're going to take this over to the table and we're going to trim everything up. Wasn't that fun? Just a little tip there to combine some steps to save a little bit of time rather than going back and forth from the machine to the table all the time. So hope that helped you out a little bit. So the next step is going to be to stitch the placement line for the fire station tires. So I put black thread up on the top of the machine. Let's go ahead and stitch out the placement lines, and while it's doing this, you can grab your black leather from your embellishment kit. Black leather. Okay, so here I am being a little bit frugal with my supplies again. It's a good thing. See, this is from the tire swings. I didn't cut it off. This is actually a good enough of a piece that I can put it right down here. My stylus. Double check that I've got it covered. Put the foot down and stitch it out right in that little section. How about that? I know. I just gonna stop it, and I'm gonna go ahead and raise the foot because that's not quite enough to cover it. I'm gonna cut right here. Let's cut that off. But this little piece is big enough. Put down. Definitely do not put your finger anywhere near this. I hadn't planned on that, but that worked out just fine. You never know how small of a piece of a supply you're going to need until it comes up. And it just happened to work out that way. So I am going to trim this off right here. And because we're going to be doing the placement for the fire truck next, I want to go trim these up. So I'll run to the table and we're going to trim this leather up. Aren't those cute little tires? And you might be saying, hey, do we have to use our special scissor technique with leather on this one? We really didn't have to, because the black leather in this kit was actually black on top and black on the bottom. It only seems like the red leather has that white background where it became an issue. The white leather obviously doesn't, it's white on white. And this was a dark black on black. So we didn't have that issue, just on the truck. So these tires are okay. So now we're going to put red thread up on the top of the machine because we are going to stitch out the fire truck placement line. So red thread up on top. Okay, easy enough. Now take your red fabric that you've chosen for the fire truck, place it over, double check to make sure you're covering that placement stitch, foot down, and let's tack it down. Okay, I'm not going to go to the table just yet because it's moving on to the clock tower. So I'm going to go ahead and do some stitch work on that and cut out the red fire engine in a little bit. So let's put some silver thread up on the top because we're going to get to do the clock tower. So the first stitch is going to be clock post scroll work detail, and then it's going to jump to the clock post placement stitch. So I'm going to do both of those stitches here in silver thread on the top of the machine. Okay, let's stitch out the detail for the clock tower. Looking good. So now it's going to do the placement stitch for the clock tower, so we can use the same silver thread that's up on the top of the machine, and let's stitch that out. Okay, That looks great. So now we're going to get the silver leather that was in your embellishment kit that we have used before. Remember I said we needed that long strip of piece? This is what we're going to need it for. So here's the top of the clock tower. Here's the bottom. So let's go ahead and position that, making sure that we cover everything. And it's over on this side. Move it a little bit more. And then I can move it a little bit more down here. Double check that we cover everything. Okay, you can either tape this down or do what I do and just hold it with the stylus. That's looking so pretty. All right, I'm still not going to go to the table yet and trim up. You're like, what? No, because the next step, it's going to stitch on this clock face right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this step here, and then I will go and trim. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see. The color that needs silver. Silver works good on top. So let's stitch out the placement line for the clock face, which will be right inside that circle. Right on. Now in your embellishment kit, there is a piece of blue leather, kind of like a royal blue leather. That's for the clock face. So we're going to put that facing up. This one we'll probably want to use our cutting techniques as well if we can, because it's a little bit lighter on the back. But we're going to make sure that we totally are covering that center of the clock. Double check. Good on that one. Good on that one. Foot down. Double check. I'll move it over a smidge. And let's go ahead and stitch out and tack down the clock face. Awesome. Okay, so this is where I want to stop now and take this over to the table and trim everything up before we get to actually stitching the rest of the clock face. So let's go trim this up. Okay, isn't that pretty? Love that silver. All right, the next step is suggesting white on the top of the machine for the clock hands. But I like the accent of what it did with the silver on the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do my clock hands in silver as well. So let's stitch out the clock hands. Silver's still on the top of the machine. Yeah, I like that. Very nice. You guys were doing it. So now let's put black thread on the top of the machine because now we're going to stitch the detail on the garage door. So black thread in the top of your machine. Hear that noise? Okay, that awful sound was the sound of a nest forming. And this is another reason why I don't leave the machine, is because if I can catch it fast enough like I just did, the nest is not that bad. So I was able to use my handy dandy set here of nesting tool fixers. And because the nest wasn't that bad, I didn't even have to use this hook to try to prop it up. I was able to slide it under because it was only a little bit thick. It wasn't that thick at all. So I didn't even have to use this piece to get it off. So that was a nest forming. And another little trick that I've learned is when a nest forms like that, the machine doesn't move in the distance and space that it's programmed to move. So when you go, you clear out the nest, you get everything good, and you go back to restart, your machine is actually out of alignment just a smidgen with where it's supposed to be on the hoop. So I found it best with the Dream Machine to go ahead and turn it off. And you're like, wait, no. The Dream Machine, and you have to check to see whether your machine does this as well. The Dream Machine will recall the exact position it was at when it reboots the machine. It'll come up and it'll ask a question and say, do you want to recall memory? And you say yes or okay. And it'll bring you right back in where you were, so you don't have to keep going forward or back to find your spot. But I find that's best, and the embroidery unit will realign and get everything nice and shiny back to where it's supposed to be. So now what I'm going to do, I'm in the hoop, is I'm going to back up a few stitches to where it's probably 20 before where it started. That way it can pick up those satin stitches again and not have an issue. So let's continue on. There, that's done, looking good. The next step is going to put a silver or a dark gray in your machine up on top, the thread. And we're going to stitch the foundation satin outline. And I'm choosing silver because I kind of like the brighter silver. So that's the thread that I'm going to put in the machine. Okay, let's stitch this out. It's really looking good now. Guess what's next? We're going to do red satin outline of the fire station. So go ahead and put red thread up on the top of your machine. And this is about a 7-minute stitch out. So sit back and relax as we stitch the red satin outline for the fire station. Who doesn't love a pretty satin stitch? Oh, those are so cool. Let's do some more. Let's do the fire station sign and the floor division satin outline, which is the next step. And I'm going to do that in the silver, or you can do it in a dark gray that matches, kind of what matches what you did on the bottom for the foundation. That would be a good look. So for my instance, I'm going to go with silver up on top. And let's stitch out this step. More satin stitches. Nice. Okay, let's put black thread in the top of the machine and let's stitch out the flagpole detail. Black thread, flagpole detail. Got it. Now we're going to do the top of the building, which is, for me, I think I like that gold look. So we're going to put gold thread up on top and stitch this out. Okay, let's stitch the roof satin detail. Gold thread. We are up to the bricks on the building. You guys are doing great. Okay, let's put white thread in the top of your machine. And let's stitch out the placement lines, actually, because there's multiple squares for the bricks. Let's stitch out the placement lines for the bricks. Nice. All right, now we're going to get the white leather out of the embellishment kit. And the bricks are going to turn into white leather. So what I'm going to do, it shows putting the whole piece down. You know me. I'm going to try to maximize this and utilize this part. But it's going to start over here first, it looks like. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to put it over here. It's going to start with this side first. So we're going to double check. Make sure that it covers everything. Like so. And so. And let's stitch down the white leather. Get ready to stop the machine. Stop. Okay, so I've stopped the machine because I don't want it to stitch these out. What I want to do now is just do a quick trim right up here and then move the leather over. Okay, I cut that white leather off. Now I can position it on this section right here. Making sure I got it covered. Everybody's covered. And that looks good. Get my stylus, put my foot down. And let's stitch this out. That looks really good. All right, let's take this over to the table and let's trim away the excess leather. You guys are doing great. Okay, now we're going to put in a light, pretty blue thread up in the top of your machine because we're going to stitch out the window satin detail. So light blue or bright blue, whatever you like, in the top of your machine. Okay, let's stitch it out. Isn't that cool? Oh, this is so exciting. I love it. Don't you guys love this? It's just, I love seeing it come to life. Okay, let's put silver or a dark gray thread in the top of your machine, and we're going to stitch out the window ledges. Okay, here we go for the window ledge fill. Now we're on to the windows. So in your embellishment kit, find your piece of mint window covering, the long plastic piece, and I'm going to go ahead and position it on the top row. It's going to go left, middle, and right, and then it's going to come down and do here, here, and here. These are awfully close, so I'm not going to try to do scrimp and save in between because I'm not going to be able to salvage that much. So I'm just going to line it up, 1/4 of an inch from the edge, 1/4 of an inch from the top. And oh, I also put, before I forget, I also put the matching blue thread up on top. They recommend white in the instructions, but again, I know I mentioned in the previous videos, I like the matching color to be whatever the window is, and that will be the tack down for this window vining. So I put the blue thread back on the top of the machine, and we are ready to stitch these down. So foot down and hold it in place just so it gets the first one going. There you go. Pretty. Now let's take this over to the table and cut away the excess vinyl. Everybody ready to do the fire truck? All right, so we're going to stitch the fire truck light fill, which is a red thread. Then it shows a slightly different red for the fire truck satin outline. And then back to the first thread for the fire truck panel fill. I think I'm just going to do it all the same red. It's a subtle change, and I don't think anyone's really going to be able to see that subtle change. But I think it'll look good all on just the same red. So I'm going to use the same red thread for the next 3 steps. Now we're on to the fire truck panel fill. It is coming together. Ready for the next step? Let's switch to a kind of a chrome dark gray. We're going to stitch the side mirrors, the grille, and the bumper details on the fire truck. Looks good. Let's put gold thread in the top of the machine so we can stitch out the headlights. All right. Okay, the next step is going to be stitch the window placement line, and that's going to be on the fire truck. So let's put white thread up on the top of the machine and stitch out the window placement line. So in your embellishment kit, you're going to find this piece of what they call permanent white topper. It almost looks like to me like a very thin plastic tablecloth. Okay, this is the piece you're going to need to lay over that placement line. We're going to put that down, covering the windows, foot down, and we're going to stitch it in place. now that this is done, we can tear away the excess. It should just tear right up. There we go. Look at that. Tears very nicely. Put that aside. Come in here and grab this other piece. There we go. And one more little piece. Let's trim that away. Nice! So now you're going to go look in your embellishment kit, and I want you to find the smaller piece of clear vinyl. This is not the mint green one. This is the smaller piece of clear. All right. So now we're going to put this down, and we're going to tack it down. You want to cover those windows. Okay. So I got the windows covered. Foot down, stitch it out. Guys, we are almost done. You're doing this. Okay, let's go over to the table and let's trim away the excess vinyl. Now we're going to put black thread up on the top of your machine, and we're going to stitch out the words fire station. Now it's not recommending in the instructions a 60 weight or anything like that, so I don't think that we're going to need to put a topper. It's on cotton fabric, so it should come out just fine. So let's stitch out the words fire station. There's some jump stitches that we'll have to trim up, and we'll do that when we go over to the table. So nothing to worry about there. Otherwise, it's looking good. And the machine has gone up to the sky area, which means it's time for fireworks. There's no rocket on this one. So we're just going to be stitching out some white fireworks. So let's put white thread in the top of our machine. Let's stitch out the white fireworks. Okay, we've got 2 steps left. Let's put red thread up at the top of your machine, and we're going to stitch out a couple red stars. Then we're going to be doing blue thread up on top for the eyelets for the fairy lights. You guys got this. Yay! All right, let's take this block over to the table and let's finish it up. Okay, this is so cute. All right, so I see some jump stitches that I'm just going to trim up here and there. One little straggler there. We've got some jump stitches on the words fire station. Try to clean this up a little bit here. It's only a couple, so bear with me. So it looks a little bit nicer. And again, these curved scissors really help to be able to get into those spaces without destroying the item below. And get those out of there, just like that. And there's one more little one here. Isn't this cute? All right, that looks good. Oh, and we've got some jump stitches in the fireworks again. Remember on the other block that they kind of look like fan blades instead of a firework? So there's some jump stitches here. I won't make you sit through all of them, but you'll want to trim those up just like I'm doing here by cutting them and then cutting the edge so you don't have a fan blade, because fireworks don't have fan blades. They're just bright and sparkly fireworks. No fan blades allowed. All right, well, there's a couple more. I'll trim those up later. All right, so you guys did it. Look at this. You did the fire station. See, I knew you could do it. You just needed to work one at a time. Start from the easiest block, work your way up to the more complicated blocks. So we can take this out of the hoop now. Da, 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 da. The big hoop. Look at that. And then we'll just trim this up while we talk. Just take off the excess of the no-show mesh. So you guys have done an awesome job. You guys just realized you have stitched out all of the blocks, the center blocks for this pillow/wall hanging. So what I mean by that is we do have some borders that we still have to stitch. So that's going to be in next week's video. We're going to work through the sashings and the borders to make either a wall hanging or a pillow. The pillow is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to walk you through those, but I'll stitch you through doing the sashings and the borders for the wall hanging, because that's what I'm actually making. But I'll walk you through the instructions on how to do the piece borders for the pillow. So this is going to be so fun. You guys are just going to have so much fun finishing this up. We do have one more video, perhaps two more videos. This is week 7. We have one more for sure next week where we're going to be cutting these blocks. I'm going to walk you through the sashings and the borders. And then I might do another separate video quickly right after that shows you how to sew them together, how to add the sashings, how to add the borders. And then all you have to do is put the backing on it and you've got your wall hanging. So we're almost there, but we're going to do at least one more video, perhaps two, because I don't want the next video to be too long. Look what you guys just did. Isn't that amazing? All right. So stay tuned. Come back and visit me again next week where we do week 8 of this project. You guys are almost there. Get your tools ready for next week. Get your rotating cutting mat. There's links in the video below. If you need one, get a good ruler. If you have the Orange Pop rulers by Kimberbell, the rectangle set, that would be great. That will help you so much. And the next thing you can start thinking about is what color fabric you would like to be as your sashing, which would be in between the rows of the blocks and on the side. And then we're going to have a border on the outside of that. So just to give you a little teaser, I'm going to be doing a white glitter fabric through here for the sashings and then a red border on the outside. So it'll literally be red, white, and blue. It's going to be so much fun. That's to give you a little teaser. So start thinking about what fabrics you want to use for your sashing and for your borders so that next week when you see the video, you'll kind of be one step ahead. We're almost there, guys. Isn't this amazing? You've done a great job. Stay tuned. Come back again next week, and we'll work on week number 8 of the Kimberbell Main Street Celebration. Thank you so much for watching Jolly Molly TV, and I'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.